Hello there and a very warm welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I'm Victor Matthias. Now, it's a few weeks after the NSAS protest began, and while the protesters are waiting for the full implementation of their 5 for 5 demands, another conversation has been at the front burner: the social media, a tool that was used during the protest by the protesters, either to spread fake or verified information or news, if you like. Now, this has resulted in the call in some quarters for the medium to be regulated. Should it or should it not be regulated? We find answers to that question on the program today, and also take a look at the 75 billion naira youth investment fund launched by the federal government. But before we get into all of that, let's take a minute to see what else made the trends in the past week.
Reports of alleged extrajudicial killings in Oigbo River State caught the attention of Nigerians just as they were reeling from the trauma of protesters in Lekki Toll Gate being shot at. Nigerians and human rights bodies, SERAP and Amnesty International, have since raised their voices, asking the military authorities to investigate and bring those responsible to book. Border closures, COVID-19 disruptions, and recent #NSARS protests, which took a violent turn 2 weeks ago, have led to the fastest yearly rise in food prices as poverty rate continues to accelerate in Nigeria. Some have also attributed the hike in food price to the inability of farmers in the north to go to the farms for fear of being kidnapped or killed by herdsmen.
Well, there you go. Those were some of the trends, but also you can be a part of the show from wherever you are watching from around the world. Just tweet at us at Channels TV, at Channels Beam, at Victor_MBIDI, and also use the hashtag social media regulation and fake news. But joining us to look at today's program, we have Uche Nwanko. He is a development economist who has worked in leading development organizations like the World Bank and the African Development Bank. He has also been involved in the coordination of senior level governance dialogue across the African continent. It's a pleasure to meet you on the program, to have you on the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course, thanks for being here. We also have with us via Skype Ademola Adeeko. He is a digital content creator. He is a writer. He is a good governance advocate and a socio-political commentator. Ademola, it's a pleasure to have you on the program today.
Thank you for having me here, Victor. Thank you.
Fantastic. So kickstart the conversation for us. Ademola, do you think social media should be regulated?
We've had this conversation before over and over again. I think some months ago when this bill was introduced in the House, this conversation has been there. We had this conversation. I think the bill was actually named I really can't remember the full name of the bill right now, but it was actually targeted at regulating social media. So we've had this conversation over and over again. And I think that every time that we've had this conversation, we've come to make people realize, especially the stakeholders at the National Assembly, to understand that this is going to be an infringement on the human rights of citizens, and also it's going to be a duplication of existing laws. So I do not in any way think that it would be right for us to regulate social media.
Yeah, so like you said, we've had these conversations over and over again, but over and over again, we also see that this medium, is being used to peddle inciting information or unverifiable information. How do we get past that?
Okay, so here's the thing. Like I rightly said before now, that there are already pre-existing laws that tackles libel, defamation, fake news, false information that are insightful and all of that. I think what we should do is try to strengthen those laws and also try to activate these laws and test these laws when the need arises. We all understand that at a point, there has to be some form of checks and balances when it comes to the uses of social media, especially in terms of fake news and propagating things that are false and that are insightful. However, if we go on a regulation of social media, we're likely to just have a repetition of laws that we already have on ground. And of course, this is targeted at social media, and in a way, it kind of neglects the fact that for other mediums can also be used to push, propaganda, fake news, and all of that. TVs can be used, radios can be used, newspapers can be used. Well, the focus on social media, especially considering the current timing right now with the whole NSAS protest, makes it suspect for when we talk about regulation of social media. So I know that at the point we would have to checkmate some of these things, but then I do not think that regulating social media is the way to go.
Demola, I'll come back to you in just a bit. Let me get to hear from Uche right here in the studio. Uche, where do you think we are in terms of, the laws that we have, according to him, and also what we can do to ensure, that fake news, as we've seen in the past few weeks during the protests and even before, can be stopped?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was listening to his comments. Well, I understand because I also share this fear that there's a deficit of trust. So we think the government wants to regulate the media so that they can suppress opposition voice. And this concern is genuine. But also, I see a need for regulation because every potent tool has a need to be controlled. So, but the issue of trust always comes up when the government always makes reference to what is happening in China. For Christ's sake, China is not a democracy. It's an autocratic society that controls what people say, how they see things. So why are you always talking about China when it's convenient? This same China, if you misappropriate money or you steal public funds of more than $15,000, you are sentenced to death. But they leave those out conveniently and just come to the ones that favor them. Why don't they talk about tolling the part of the West? I mean, it's also a concern. It's a concern everywhere. It's a concern in Germany. It's a concern in the whole of EU, the US. But look at the procedure. They are following a different approach to it. Because of, it has, it's an amplifier. It amplifies, it gives voice to the voiceless and also to the mighty. So it has to be controlled so that people with bad intentions, people with decisions to destroy, do not take advantage of it. So look at the approach abroad. The EU is trying to put more burden on those that have these platforms to take liability for actions. So
rather than the individuals.
Rather than before now, as about 20 years ago, the approach for them was that, okay, the onus, they were devoid of liability. You were not liable for what people posted on your platform. So the onus was on the individual to make sure that they posted, but it wasn't working. So now the approach is, the liability is for both the owner of the platform and the person who posts the news. And that is not enough because we have seen issues with selling of people's data and posting it that are not verified.
So privacy issues also come
Privacy issues. But here, the government is very much interested in what people say and not even about their data. You understand? So this also pushes out the issue of trust because there are so many problems in Nigeria. So it's embarrassing for them that when people say things, if they say 100 things, 99 is about one complaint or the other. So you understand where the trust comes from. So I actually, if there is no deficit of trust, there's a genuine need for concern because moderation is important in everything we do.
All right, Demola, I'm trying to look into your background, and I see there is a picture of Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka, and this video of him has been circulating this past few days, where he talked about why social media, should be he didn't really say regulated, but he talked about how Nigerians might be able to use social media to cause chaos. Doesn't that give you concern, especially from someone that you have his picture hung on your wall?
Well, like I said before, I agree that to an extent, something needs to change about the way people use social media, and that's a statement of fact. Whether we like it or not, at the point we would have to. But like the other guest said rightly, there's a trust deficit between the people and the government. And here it is. Why is it that every time that the people come out to voice their grievances, it's always when the government tries to bring up this issue of regulating social media? Now, when you want to regulate social media, I think that we need to have a clear line of thought, a clear pattern, a clear roadmap that would be followed in all of those things. And I also think that bringing people on board, the stakeholders, of course, on social media, even the social media companies themselves ought to also have representation. The young people in Nigeria have to have representation. The people who use social media across the country needs to have representation. Then we can all sit down and have a dialogue on how we want to, use this tool to our own good and also expunge the negative part of it. But, the Nigerian government says nothing until, people try to agitate for something. And recently, this whole talk about regulating social media came back up recently because of the NSAS protest. So this actually shows that there's a little bit of trust deficiency between the people and the government, and people don't trust the government when it comes to regulation. So basically, we have seen so many statements coming from the minister for the youth minister, the minister for youth and sport. We've also heard statements from other government officials, and the way they put this statement makes it feel like, look, we need to regulate social media, but then we are not having a proper conversation about how we want to go about it. I mean, look at the Minister of Information for Alhaji Lai Mohammed, who said recently that they need the technology to shut down social media at will. Statements like this actually goes a long way to prove to people that, look, it is beyond regulating social media. It's about shutting down dissenting voices. It's about shutting down agitation for good governance. And it's about shutting down the only thing that the Nigerian youths have at the moment, which is their voice. So this is where the problem lies. We need to see sincerity when it comes to, making policies to regulate people's voices. Not just coming every time that people complain about something, you bring up the issue of regulating social media.
So
And
Demola, let me quickly butt in. Demola, let me quickly butt in. You said that the reason why this whole issue has come up again is as a result of what transpired during the NSAS protest. But you would agree with me as well that during this same protest you're talking about, there was a lot of fake news that was put out there that whipped up sentiments and emotions and all of that. Do you think maybe perhaps there is some little form of justification for this to come up?
Okay, so now, like I rightly said, when the NSAS protest started, I mean, this thing has been going on for a lot of years now. 2017, there was one in 2018. I think about last year too, there was still these agitations for the end of the protest. Apart from this protest, I don't think that there's ever been any time that we have issues on social media that social media has not been used, for fake news. And also, we can also say that on the part of the government has also shared fake news so many times. The Nigerian army has shared fake news so many times. The Lagos state government has also shared fake news in so many instances. So this is not just an issue that falls on the side of the people alone. It's also a problem that the government itself has also invested in one way or the other, whether directly or indirectly. So this is not a problem on the part of the people. It's a general problem. And also the focus on social media means that, look, the traditional media is already regulated. The NBC is already there to regulate the traditional media. Now, we also understand that at the point, like I've said initially, that there has to be some checks and balances. However, people do not trust the government to do enough. So during this NSAS protest, there were lots of fake news, that were shared and all of that. And I've seen countries where instead of directly, fighting fake news from the people who actually put out these things, governments have liaised with social media companies like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, to help them in the battling of fake news. And I think that is a better option.
So let's hope that happens here in Nigeria, Demola. Let's hope that the government will, bringing those people to, come around and, help to battle fake news. That's if they haven't. But like you said, again, it's a two-way thing. Not only people, but also authorities have also been caught napping, doing the same thing that we're talking about, using social media to spread fake news. But I'd have to say thank you for joining us today, Demola Adeko, and sharing your thoughts on this.
Thank you so much.
Indeed. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll look at the 75 billion naira Nigerian Youth Investment Fund that was just launched by the federal government. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Now we shift our attention to the 75 billion naira Youth Investment Fund launched by the federal government. And of course, we still have with us a development economist, Uche Wanko, right here with us in the studio. Uche, I mean, this fund is coming and people are thinking, was it because of the protest? But I mean, it's not the first time that the government is making available, this kind of funds for people to access and, pay back, boost their businesses and pay back. But let's even begin from previous funds that have been made available. How well would you say those have been utilized?
Yeah, thank you. See, actually, in Nigeria, part of sometimes government actually goes out to do something with good will, with good intentions. But it's also a problem that people cannot track and there's no kind of accountability. Because you could have said to have actually disbursed these funds, but there has to be a record for people to actually verify because people don't trust everything that government says. Post-COVID, there was a 50 billion naira that was made available. Personally, I don't know anybody that accessed the fund.
That doesn't mean nobody accessed the fund.
It doesn't mean. I'm just saying, because I know there are a lot of people, and here on this show, I complained that it was not adequate. It was too small. So now this 75 billion is exclusively for youth from age 18 to 35. The interest rate of 5%. Yeah, so it's laudable, but this is not to say that this is enough. It's just a drop in the ocean. But still.
Can it ever be enough?
Well, it can be enough. It can be reasonable. There can be a capital allocation for a particular course, and you say, okay, this is reasonable. Yeah, this should make an impact. I think this is coming as an aftermath of the EndSARS protest. Because if you look at the demographics that was involved in this action, they fall in between this age group. So it's kind of trying to placate them. But this is, I mean, the cap, I think the maximum you can get from this is 250,000 naira. An individual can get from this. Because they plan for it, and they say it's going to run for over, I think, 5 years. Every year, they want to be 500,000 people to be able to access it. So they're going to get between 50,000 to 250,000. So, I mean, this is paltry. Because really, it's important that when you are looking to invest in a person, you be reasonable and look at what they can achieve with that. I mean, that is feeding money. So what kind of business can you, because you are trying to make this man reliant. Because part of the issues we are looking at is that...
Are you saying that one can't start a proper business with the sum of 50,000 naira?
Well, I don't know. It's difficult to fathom what kind of business you want to do 50,000. It's too mega. I don't know if... I mean, do you know the price of stuffs now? So you have to be realistic and try to really do something. And that is why sincerity is lacking. A lot of times it's a knee-jerk reaction. People protest today, tomorrow government announces a fund. There's no thorough framework to see that this will sincerely alleviate the program. We won't see these people getting back to the streets in a long time. You understand what I mean? So the government is embarrassed. The EndSARS went out of hands. It got the kind of coverage that they did not anticipate. So they're trying to see what they can do. They were rushing to resolve the ASU issue. They said, okay, now go back to markets. Everybody, they want to engage people, so just to keep people off the street. So the impression they are giving is that they are not ready to actually find a lasting solution. It's somehow, it's crazy, because if you look at it, the 65%, 65 years and above, it's just 5% of the population in Nigeria. Just 5%. And if you look at the governments, they are the ones running things. So you see that 65% is actually like holding 95 to ransom. So how can you look at the budget, look at the allocations, look at things set aside for the youth? How can you do these things and you sideline your major demographics?
So how much do you think would be reasonable enough to start a business in Nigeria?
Well, see, you know...
And again, like you said earlier, it depends on the kind of business.
Yes.
So a business that would, you know, keep one afloat to be able to maintain himself, employ more staff, and then at the same time pay back the interests, you know, on that loan. How much do you think would be enough to start a business?
Yeah, see, it will be difficult to pinpoint still, because money is not really money is not only the issue, because you see, access to credit is very important, having capital to do what you want to do. But there are other factors. See, look at the...
Like what?
The infrastructures, because these are things that will determine how long you last. Infrastructures, the laws, the policy, the quality of the institutions. Look at this social media regulation. Everybody knows that it's just a matter of time. The West, everywhere, there's going to be some kind of regulation that's going to deter people from making statements that can incite people and cause chaos, you know. But in Nigeria here, and in developing societies, the concern is that the institutions are not strong enough to regulate these regulators. Because if there is an issue, you go to the court and say, okay, this is what I posted online. Does this constitute a breach? Is this criminal? Then the court will say, okay, this. But if you allow the policymakers in Nigeria now, because they want to repress the people, they will make vague laws that are not precise and can be interpreted in separate ways. So you just muscle people and you don't get... So the issue in the country is actually an issue of sincerity.
Does that apply to business as well?
It does. It does. See, it cuts across everything. See, the approach, the way you approach something, will either make the person friendly or confrontational. If you are sincere about helping businesses, you should pay attention, give them something realistic, then work on factors, because factors are important. The light, the laws, the taxes, the respect for contracts. So, because I can go into business today, the government changes the policy overnight. Look at Go-Kada and the likes. They give me money today, I start something with all my funds, I even borrow money from abroad, mobilize. Then one government comes and also a lot of people are disenfranchised. Look at the scale of destruction. People were destroying things they could get no value from. How can you go to a building and tear a building down? Like, money is not coming out from that building. So you are scared. So look at this. So if you give me the money, some people would rather use that money and just keep it and be feeding. Well,
let's hope that doesn't happen with this fund that the federal government has just launched. Let's hope that people will actually use it for the businesses, and hopefully there would be those policies and laws and taxes, tax breaks, you know, hopefully, and all those things will be in place for the money to be well utilized. But I have to say thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to add before, see, what it takes is sincerity.
Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that. We're running out of time. Thank you again
thank you
for
very
coming
much
on the show.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the most viewed videos on our YouTube channel in the past week.
I cannot pass judgment on the president until I find out.
The reaction by the national leader of the APC, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to the shooting of unarmed protesters kicks off this week's most viewed videos.
I condemn the act of killing, shooting innocent protesters.
No governor in this country, not one, can say they have challenged SARS like Rivers State government did.
The claims by Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike that the state has suffered the most from the brutality of the disbanded SARS follows and forth.
Nobody has suffered, no state has suffered in the hands of SARS like Rivers State.
In third is the aftermath of the NSAS protest, which saw the prison break that occurred in Benin City, freeing inmates in the process. Still in Edo State, the second spot sees the protest turning bloody as thugs attack protesters. While the video of musician and self-styled Omo Babaolowo Davido visiting the IGP to present the protesters' demands tops the chart this week.
In line with the new Police Act, which they just signed, even before this, psychological evaluation and retraining of all disbanded SARS officers before they can be redeployed.
And that's the show this week. Thank you so very much for watching. I'm Victor Matthias.